follow me out of them doors because I'll be first through them. Okay. If I can now ask everyone to introduce themselves, starting with the young lady to my left.
Good evening. My name's Tasneem Safdar. I'm the Legal Services Team Leader, and I will be assisting the committee tonight in respect of any legal issues.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Mal Donoghue and I'm Vice Chair of the Planning Committee and also represent Seven Stars Ward.
Ben Story, Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening, Councillor Colin Sharples, Earnshaw Bridge Ward, and I'm standing in for Chris Lomax.
Good evening, Councillor Gareth Watson, Count Green and Gregson Lane.
Good evening, Councillor Phil Smith, New Longton and Hutton East. Thank you.
Good evening, Councillor Harry Hancock, Broad Oak Ward, Penwortham.
Good evening, Councillor Peter Molyneux, Sandringham Walton, and I'm substituting for Councillor Berry Yates.
Good evening, I'm Kath Unsworth, Councillor for St Ambrose Ward, and I'm substituting for Claire Hunter.
Good evening all, I'm Councillor John Hesketh, I represent Longton and Hutton West.
Good evening, Councillor James Flannery from Middleford Penwortham, and I'm also the Cabinet Member for Planning.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Mary Green, Councillor for Moss Side and Midge Hall.
Good evening, Chris Sowerby, Planning Officer.
Good evening, Daniel Power, Planning Officer.
Good evening, Janice Crook, Planning Officer.
Good evening, Stephen Brown, Planning Manager.
Good evening, Jonathan Node, Director of Planning and Development.
Okay, thanks everyone. Just as a little side, if you've got mobiles, can you put them on silent, please? Okay, thank you. Okay, apologies for absence. Ben, please.
Yes, we've had apologies for absence from Councillor Caroline Moon and Councillor Will Adams, in addition to the ones that have already been mentioned.
Okay, move on to item number 3. Do we have any declarations of interest this evening? No, okay, I have read and agreed, and Councillor Green. Clearly not. Yeah, if you wish, yeah. Are you leaving the meeting or not? Well, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, thanks, Councillor Green. I've read and agree with the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of October. Can I have a seconder, please? Thanks, Councillor Smith. I'll get those signed off, and I would like to invite Stephen to report on appeal decisions. Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We've got one appeal decision tonight, and unfortunately it's a loss. It was for 5 East Square in Longton. You will remember it was before this committee on 2 occasions. It was a proposal for the erection of a 1 detached bungalow with access off Longcroft at 5, and the site was actually at 5 East Square. It comprised the garden areas of number 5 and number 6. The proposed bungalow, you'll recall, was facing onto Longcroft, and the application was refused by the Planning Committee primarily because of the impact upon the character and appearance of the area by virtue of the proximity to the highway to the front. The inspector acknowledged that the dwelling would not have similar space to the front as other dwellings and would appear closer to the pavement. However, he concluded that as most of the front gardens appeared hard paved with limited vegetation, he felt the appeal proposal wouldn't appear at odds with the area. Secondly, he concluded that because the proposal was relatively low in height, although it would form a visual stop at the end of Longcroft, it would not appear out of place, overbearing or unduly prominent, and on that basis he allowed the appeal, unfortunately. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Stephen. So beware of your garden space. Okay, item, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can we just agree to disagree with the planning inspector? Thank you.
Yeah, I think he's made a faux pas there. A wide open one. Right, okay, let's move on to item number 6. Chris Sowerby to present the item and it isn't a South Ribble Borough Council planning application. We're just being asked for our views. Okay, Chris, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is currently being considered by Lancashire County Council and only relates to the sections of the Cuerden allocation that is under their control. The adopted master plan proposed employment uses together with complementary uses and enabling development. In the eastern section, high-value enabling development is proposed. This did not specify retail for then IKEA. The access strategy includes a primary access off the M65 terminus. The previous IKEA scheme included a secondary access onto Wigan Road. However, this has been omitted from the current proposal. It is proposed that the development would be split in 5 zones of different character and uses. Zone A is located centrally within the site and includes a range of employment, leisure and retail uses. Zone B is the section on which the IKEA store was to be constructed and is now proposed to be developed into large B2 and B8 employment units. Zone C is the northeastern corner and is proposed to be mid-sized B2 and B8 units and also leisure. And Zone D bounds Stanifield Lane and again is predominantly B2 and B8 employment uses. Zone E is the north western corner and is proposed for up to 116 residential units. Maximum building heights are set for each area. This includes up to 13.7 metres for the residential phase and a maximum of 25 metres for the commercial. A number of existing residential properties within the site are to remain. Within section 1 of the officer report, there are a number of recommendations. Officers advise we should be reporting back to Lancashire County Council. Officers feel that the submission is currently deficient, requiring work to be undertaken on viability evidence and retail impact analysis. The county's attention is also drawn to other material planning considerations which are required to be satisfied. Officers are of the view that the 8 listed points should be conveyed to LCC and welcome any further points to be included by the planning committee. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Thanks for your presentation. Right, we have a registered speaker on this item, Tom Whitehead from Brookhouse. If you'd like to come to the table, press the button that says speak and you have 4 minutes. Okay.
Thank you, Chair and members. My name is Tom Whitehead. I'm the Group Town Planning Manager for the Brookhouse Group. We are one of 2 principal landowners for the Cuerden strategic site. The other owner is the applicant, Lancashire County Council. We are conditionally supportive of the application, but there are significant shortcomings. Brookhouse land has been excluded from the application. There is no certainty that road linkages will be provided to our land. This therefore places 1/3 of the Cuerden site at risk of not being developed. Your officers recognise this point in their first recommendation to you. The proposed layout is awkward, focused on land ownership alone rather than what is best for the site. By Lancashire's own estimates, their scheme delivers considerably less employment floor space per hectare than it would do if they were working with us. The risk to South Ribble is this: that the council will not deliver on its employment floor space the local plan intended it did. Given this, you are likely to be under pressure to release Greenbelt elsewhere in the borough to make up for that shortfall. It is therefore in South Ribble's interests that the Cuerden site is maximised for development. Highway access must be provided to Brookhouse land. We have been here before. A previous application for the site was determined by South Ribble in 2017. At that point, South Ribble saw fit to impose a condition requiring unfettered access to the remaining parts of the allocation. This evening, we're simply asking you for a similar condition this time round. Your officer's second recommendation is that proposals pay due regard to the 2015 master plan that South Ribble adopted. An important component to that master plan was a highway connection from the M65 terminus roundabout through to Stanifield Lane. Such a connection would provide traffic relief to the already congested A582 Lostock Lane, which is to the north of the site. Without that link, our engineers advise that this application would worsen traffic conditions on the A582. And we note that Highways England have already issued a holding objection to this application. In their report to committee this evening, officers have made a series of recommendations to you. We commend those recommendations. However, given the points we raise, we would welcome a strengthening of those recommendations as follows. Firstly, that a binding planning condition is imposed, ensuring unfettered access to connections throughout the site allocation. And secondly, that a link road is secured through the site to relieve pressure on the A582 road to the north. Both of these obligations South Ribble itself imposed on the 2017 permission, so they would simply represent a consistency with your previous approach. For our part, we remain absolutely committed to trying to work constructively with the County Council in delivering the site. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, Tom, thanks for your presentation. I think the highways issue would normally be LCC, would it not, Chris? Not South Ribble?
As part of dealing with the planning application, they will be receiving highways advice, presumably from LCC Highways, in relation to the highways impacts of the proposal.
And can we ask for that condition to be put on when we make our recommendations or not?
We can ask for whatever we want, that's reasonable.
Okay, all right, Tom, thanks for your presentation. Councillor Michael Green, did you want to speak on this up? No, okay, sorry. Right. I'll open up to committee then for your views. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think some of us that have been around a while have been linked and to this site for quite a long time. There were several meetings with County and with Brookhouse many years ago, which cumulated it in what is the master plan that I had there from last time, which for me is the important document. It would appear to me, having briefly read this, well, I've read it, but there isn't much information in there, to be quite honest. It's not a planning application. It's not really a master plan. I'm not actually sure what it is, because we haven't really got the detail. I can't see anything on the screen over there. I could go and stand over there and watch that one. So the presentation wise, it's not good either, to be quite honest. I've got my specs on, but I don't need them for that. I need them for what's down here. For me, there are several good things in this document with regard to retail space. And I think things have changed quite considerably in the retail market with regard to sort of superstores and shops and the way that people are shopping nowadays. And the reduction in retail, from my point of view, is welcome. It helps protect the various retail areas that we have, as in Leyland and Bamber Bridge, are two bigger areas, plus the other shopping areas as well that we have in the villages. So for me, that seems a good thing. I think some of the recommendations that the officers have put down are good, and I think I agree with all of those. Some of them could be sharpened up and maybe a bit woolly, certainly with item number 7 on the recommendation number 7, where assurances sought that the impact of additional traffic will impact on the highway. I would like to see a lot more than that. I mean, that assurance is to me, on such a site that we've been trying to bring forward for years and years and years, is just not good enough. And I suppose linked with the next application that we'll be looking at, and the two are separate and distinct, but I mean, they're almost conjoined in lots of ways. The 582, which I'm sure everybody is going to talk about, well, I certainly am, is absolutely paramount. We know how blocked that road is now, and certainly I would not want any application coming forward that would increase the traffic levels down the 582, which is badly congested. It needs sorting badly before anything happens, to be quite honest. I do have some sympathy with Brookhouse with regard to the route through the site. That was a major cause of concern with the with county council and the various people that were having input into it. It was absolutely was. I mean, there was speaking over that for years and years and years, and finally got something that everybody, I think, was agreeing to in the master plan, which we have, which is current and extant. It's going on. We've still got it. So for me, whatever county do with that, with regard to the amount of work that was put in at the time with regard to access on the highways, is really, really important, and it should comply with the master plan itself. And some of the other things in there with regard to employment, which, it was always an employment site. The retail on it was the arm to deliver the employment site. It would appear that is not necessary anymore. But I would like to see a master plan, if it's going to change or come forward, encompassing the complete site. It doesn't make any sense to have pieces of it taken out of it. It really does need to be the complete site. I probably will come back on a few other things, Chair, but at the moment, that's my bit, I think, for on highways. I look forward to some of it. Some of it looks very, very good, to be quite honest, of what may come forward. We don't know what they are, with no detail on it. I would like to know more detail of what the leisure is going to be, because that's increased significantly from 0 to 26,000 square metres, is it, I think, if I'm reading it correctly. And that's one big leisure complex, so some confirmation of that would be, I think, would be helpful. I doubt whether it's in the report, but it's... So I think that's it for me for a moment, Chair, but I would like to maybe come back later on. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Smith, thank you. Chris, can you confirm any of the details just asked for or not?
Yes, I mean, the leisure centre use, again, these are maximum floor areas. It says within the report, if you take the total, they can't deliver all of the floor area that's listed. It just gives them flexibility. So they're applying for a variety of uses. Some of them may come forward in their totality. Some of them may come forward in part. Some of the uses may not come forward at all. But yes, they are now including a leisure centre use up to 26,000 square metres. The master plan was adopted prior to the previous application that came before planning committee. There is no new master plan on the table. The applicants assert that the proposal that they have before them, the outline application, fully accords with that master plan, and that there isn't a new or amended master plan required. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. Councillor Mrs. Green.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I too have all the concerns that Councillor Smith said, but I've got some other concerns as well. My main concern really is the two access points into the site from Stanifield Lane. I believe into the residential part, first of all, to the 116 houses. Does there have to be an extra access put there? Could an arm not be created off the roundabout at Cuerden, there, next to the residential site, an extra arm into that, instead of making a separate access from Stanifield Lane into that residential area? Also, why is the exit into Zone D and Zone A not facilitated from the roundabout X, which is that roundabout, not the one there at Cuerden, the other one, shall we say Sainsbury's roundabout, we'll call it Sainsbury's to make it easy, instead of Stanifield Lane? Because my fear is there's going to be created a rat run. I can see it happening. You've got traffic coming along that's going to be coming along Stanifield Lane, accessing that Zone D, and for want of not going round that roundabout at Cuerden, which is very busy at peak times, they can cut through the site eventually, right through to the other roundabout there, the big roundabout at Sainsbury's there. So it's creating a rat run through the site. This is one concern of mine as well. The industrial use access is important, as HGVs need to access the sites via the motorway or the bypass and not Stanifield Lane. Also, there's always a fear. I mean, we've had for years problems of HGVs coming off at junction 28 into Leyland, which they could potentially still carry on coming off there and go all the length of Leyland through Stanifield Lane into that Zone D, instead of coming off at 29 and onto the bypass or off the motorway or whatever. That's another fear. So I'm really worried about this Stanifield Lane access. Wonder if that could be put forward as some of our concerns. If for any chance it does go forward with those two accesses from Stanifield, is it possible we could have a weight limit put on Stanifield Lane at all? That would perhaps reduce the really, really heavy goods vehicles going down there, because it's potentially a residential area. There's bungalows and houses all the way along Stanifield Lane right up to the railway station. So you're potentially going to have these lorries coming through a residential area. They could even come along Golden Hill down Centurion Way and out, turn left off Centurion Way down Stanifield Lane and enter it that way, or use that as a rat run across instead of going all the way around. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Mrs. Green. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Mrs. Green on this one. Chris, if you could put those, recommend it. Stanifield Lane's packed as it is. And you've got Zone E there on the side of Stanifield Lane, Stony Lane and Old School Lane. And personally, I think it's an awful place to put new housing, personally. But Councillor Smith, you wanted to come back in, yeah?
Yeah, it was just with regard to the sort of the leisure thing, which is substantial on there. Presumably this is somebody just sort of testing the water. I mean, I assume there's no client there at this stage because we're looking years and years ahead. So it's something that will be built if there's a client there, but if there's no client there, it won't be built and could become something else, presumably. Is that the case? So.
Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to obviously Tom who spoke tonight on behalf of Brookhouse. It's obviously the applicant's not speaking tonight, and I always find that a bit curious on something as important as an application like this. This is determined by LCC, obviously, and we're here as a consultee. But what I would just like to do is make sure that the views of all councillors tonight are added to the recommendations and we're reinforced in terms of what we're proposing, and the comments from Tom as well added to it, because if we're going to get an opportunity to do this right in such a major scheme, I think all these considerations need to be balanced for the right reasons. But is this not, just for clarification, is this not an expiring application, Chair, which is expiring in December 22 and they're coming in for basically a refresh? Anyway.
Chris, can you come on that?
Yes, the previous planning permission is expiring quite shortly, so this is a new application, a fresh application.
Councillor Flannery, are you happy with that?
Yeah, that's why obviously it's before us tonight, but I just think the views of councillors around the table need to be added to our views in terms of recommendations, so thanks.
Well, I think we should reinforce our views on Stanifield Lane,
Yeah, all views, I think, should be tonight.
Yeah, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly, access is the key issues around this. I'm quite keen on link roads, to be honest with you, because I do agree that they do tend to relieve it, because obviously you've got traffic going for less distance. So even if we're moving things on Stanifield through the site, it does have the potential of alleviating some of the elements near the roundabouts and so on. So having that access through, so that we're not having to have so many ingress egress points along all those roads, I think just makes sense. Also, again, landlocking practically Brookhouse, and then potentially, Brookhouse Group, potentially leading to even more access and egress points in the future if they are able to, wishing to develop. Again, it just doesn't make sense not to do these things at the same time. It's almost a bit like the argument around infrastructure not being delivered first, which you could make a question about A582 in that scenario. But even Stanifield Lane itself, possibly, when you were looking at the master plan in the past, I admit I wasn't around at this particular point, but certainly I would have thought that would have encompassed a wider area rather than such a narrow focus here. And so things like Stanifield Lane, some of the road layout and so on could have been looked at with potential mini roundabouts or whatever. I don't particularly know, obviously I'm not a highway engineer, but something to allow that flow to improve in that area. These things I think probably need to be considered at the same time, especially with Lancashire County Council being the people bringing this forward. So yeah, absolutely. The link road, I think, should be a no-brainer as far as, I don't know, we can't enforce it, particularly this is a recommendation, but it's certainly something I would like to strongly consider, absolutely, to try and reduce the number of ingress and egress points, especially with going forward by allowing Brookhouse Group to be able to develop that land accordingly. And was there something else? No, yeah, as I say, it's just that whole look at the wider area and see if something else can be done at the same time, which is a large investment. It doesn't necessarily need a massive amount of money spent on some elements of Stanifield Lane. Sure, it'd be great if it could be widely increased as a whole. I don't see that as being realistic, but there are certainly points along there when we've got the cricket thing coming up next as well that could do to be done as a part of this going forward. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Watson. Councillor Smith again, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just would like some clarification with regard to an application that is existing that is about to run out. I'm not quite sure what that is. It wasn't clear. So could we just be clear on that particular point, please, Chris?
Yes, that is the 2017 previous application on this site that included the IKEA.
Right, okay. I get that now, but that complied with the master plan, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and this particular one doesn't comply with the master plan because it's not a complete site.
Well, a master plan is a broad set of parameters for an entire site. So you have a master plan for a wider site. This is focusing on certain areas within that master plan area. And again, our suggestion to LCC is that they need to look very carefully at that master plan to ensure that the proposal before them complies with the requirements of the master plan, albeit part of that master plan area.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I think also, just to be clear, certainly from my point of view, I really look forward to this site coming forward. I really look forward to county actually bringing it forward, and it's been a long time coming, hasn't it? A long time coming, and we all know what it was there for. It was there to create employment in a big way, but it also creates a great deal of income by the city deal and income to the council in various different ways. So it's a really important site to actually bring forward, and I don't think we can underplay the financial elements that are involved in all this. It is significant. I do look forward to it coming forward and making yet another start on it, and I think that's really important. So, county, we should be supporting as much as we can to help it come forward, but I'd still would like to see a complete master plan and see that the whole site is planned, so we know what's actually going on there, because I think that again is absolutely fundamental to bringing the complete site forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Hesketh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have reservations in connection with this site, and I agree with a number of the points that have been put forward. I would much have preferred it to have come as one block, one site, and sort of all be developed around the same time. But the snag is we're where we are, and maybe that we have to make a start somewhere, and I presume that this application that is before us tonight is that initial start. But at this point, I'm not going to comment which way or the other that I'm going to vote, but that's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Hesketh. We're not actually voting tonight, are we? We're just putting forward recommendations, aren't we?
Well,
yeah. I'm really struggling with Stanifield Lane access personally, but there you go. Councillor Flannery.
Sorry, Chair, I think Taz wanted to come in, that's all.
Yes, boss.
Through you, Chair, I think it's just a matter of obviously committee voting to put forward recommendations that are on the actual application together with the comments that have been made tonight. So there will be a vote.
I've been told again. Right, Councillor Smith.
Yes, Chair. I think it's important that whether we all agree one way or another, or we agree a way forward, and the way forward is obviously the recommendations that are going to go forward to county. And I think it's important that we do actually take a vote on that and make sure that we're all in agreement with what is going forward. Thank you.
Would we all be happy to put in objections to access from Stanifield Lane? Councillor Mrs. Green. I'm sorry, can you put your mic on?
If they do decide to still stick with the Stanifield access, whether they can put a weight limit on it for vehicles going down Stanifield Lane. The whole length of Stanifield Lane, please.
I think we might struggle with that, but Councillor Molyneux.
We can but try, can't we?
We can but try, correct. Councillor Molyneux.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we're being asked to agree with these 8 recommendations tonight, which is fine. But obviously, we're finding 1 or 2 other things that we want to put in. So as long as we can add that to this, and we're not being restricted in any way, I'm quite happy to move forward with this. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think mostly the traffic, which is what I pointed out to start with on the officer recommendation number 7. That's the one that wants beefing up. Assurances sought that the impact on additional traffic. I think that's what I mean. It wants building up. How can we get insurance? Do we need to be more specific on that particular issue? I believe we do with Stanifield Lane, and I believe we do with the 582, Chair. I think that needs beefing up as a recommendation. So whatever I recommend in officer speak, however we beef that up, I think they've got the picture in the sense that Stanifield Lane needs beefing up and the 582 needs beefing up, and that can go in recommendation 7. Thank you.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Jonathan. Yeah, called you Councillor Nord.
Promotion. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Chair. I mean, Stephen and Chris have been taking notes of the discussion and the additional items that members have discussed. So I think what we do as officers is draft a letter of response, which would be in more detail than these 8 recommendations. In any way, you'd probably have a couple of paragraphs in each one just to explain why we're concerned. So maybe the vote is about agreeing with those plus what else has been discussed in the meeting, and then maybe delegate it for Chair to approve the final letter to go out. I think that's what we normally do in these circumstances, Taz, I think.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll agree with the 8 recommendations plus. Stephen, can you read out what else we want adding to those 8 recommendations, please?
Yeah, there's quite a comprehensive list, Chair. There's the binding condition for unfettered access to the Brookhouse land, the link road through the site to relieve pressure on the A582, queries about the amount of retail space that Councillor Smith raised. Item 7, as we've discussed, so we can build on the whole of the highway issue. Doubt as to whether there's the need for the extra access of Stanifield Lane and why can't it come in off Sainsbury's roundabout. The avoidance of a rat run. Industrial users use the motorway and the bypass and not off Stanifield Lane. Insurance that it doesn't come off junction 28 on the motorway but uses junction 29. Request for a weight limit on Stanifield Lane. Councillor Thomason reiterated that Stanifield Lane is already at capacity as it is. Councillor Watson reiterated access through to avoid landlocking. Councillor Hesketh would rather see it come forward as a whole. And I think that covers everything. Yeah. Thanks.
So if we're all happy, Councillor Flannery.
Can I propose that? Thanks, Chair.
You can. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Smith? Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder that the 8 recommendations before us. I can see him.
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
coming to him in a moment. I don't need any. So it's the 8 recommendations in front of us, plus what Stephen's just added, which is an addendum that's greater than the actual recommendation. Councillor Watson.
Sorry, just to mention the improvement of traffic flow, if there is going to happen on Stanifield Lane, if there's anything can be done as far as improving traffic flow, if they do add those extra egress and entrances. Thank you, Chair.
He's writing that down as we speak. So can we go to the vote for all those recommendations if we're happy? If we're happy, vote yes. If you're not happy, vote no. Okay, Taz, if you could give us the outcome of that vote, please. Councillor Hesketh, you haven't voted yet. Okay, Taz.
Thank you, Chair. So in respect to the Cuerden strategic site, members have voted to take on the views set on the report together with the comments made by committee tonight, to be formulated by the planning officer as submitted to LCC as determining authority. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Taz. Moving on to item 7. If you've just come for item 6, you're quite welcome to leave if you wish to, or you can spend the evening with us getting bored. It's entirely up to yourself. Okay, item number 7. Again, this isn't a South Ribble application. It's been asked for our views by LCC, and it's the land at Woodcock Estate, Stanifield Lane, Farington. Daniel, if you'd like to present this item, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an application that is a consultation from Lancashire County Council for our views on the proposal. So the first slide shows the location of the site with the A582 along the top, the now infamous Stanifield Lane along the east, Fowler's Avenue and Lane along this side. So as I say, Lancashire County Council have sought our views on the application, and within section 1 of the report, I've identified 3 of the main points. The first being the development should not result in inappropriate development within the Greenbelt, and consideration as to whether the pavilion will be exempt under the NPPF. The second is to ensure the development preserves the openness of the Greenbelt. And the third, officers raise objections to the impact of the development on a neighbouring amenity. To that point, this slide shows the land ownership, which is in blue, and the application site, which is in red. I'll just draw members' attention to the neighbouring properties, which are identified along here, and the proximity to the development. I'll make reference to that during the presentation as well. So this slide shows what is proposed. So there's a new access off Stanifield Lane on the top right part, which gives access to a main car park. This part of the car park would be hard surfaced and would be there all the time. The section to the right would be for additional parking when required, generally on big match days. There's the two ovals within the centre, one slightly smaller than the other, with the pavilion building here, and then practice nets along here, with some additional car parking in here and an access road to that parking. Again, you can see the neighbouring properties and the relationship to the development here, and then some along here as well. So this slide, or the next two slides, show the pavilion building. So the top slide is the north elevation, so that's along here, with the bottom one being the east elevation. As you can see, this is partly also a cut through the site. So as part of the proposal, there will be a change in the levels. So the ovals would have banking that would go round to allow spectators to stand, which is part of what you can see here, the cut through on the bottom image. So the top is the south elevation, and you can just see on the left-hand side the practice nets, which are along the western boundary. And the bottom image is the western elevation. Again, you can see some of that car parking that I made reference to before. So this slide shows the floor spaces of the proposed building. So the one on the left is the upper ground floor, and the one on the right is the lower ground floor. So the last image, the lower ground floor is this, and then the upper ground floor is the top section. So in relation to recommendation 1 and the concern in terms of the pavilion and whether it would fall under the exemption, just to talk you through the building itself, this green triangle here is a function space. So you have also changing rooms in these sections here. There's a kitchen, there's various toilet facilities. There's a like a canteen for players as well, and changing rooms. And then the lower ground floor also has groundkeepers, storage, and a gym. This slide shows the proposed practice nets, which you can see partly is also cut into the ground. This is along the western boundary, which I will show again in a minute, and it's very close to that western boundary. So this is one of the elements of concern and the impact that this would have on those neighbouring properties. So this is just some of the cross sections that were provided. So what I've called section A is the top one here, which is a cut through there. So just where my pointer is one of those properties. So you can see the relationship between the properties, the mound, and the pavilion. The bottom one shows a cross section further down, which I'll call section B. So that goes through part of the practice nets that you can see here. And again, there is a little change in levels, but they are within close proximity to those neighbouring properties, as you'll see in some photos later on. And again, shows the change in levels for the pavilion. So this photo is taken from one of the neighbouring properties at their first floor. So if you can just see the arrow on the bottom hand side, what we would be looking onto here is a bin store, which is along the practice nets, which is what this green triangle is here. Sorry, green rectangle is here. So this area would have the bin store and then practice nets running along there, with the left-hand side having the mound, as you can see where that cursor is there, would be here. And if you just make note of that white building, because I'll make reference to that again shortly in another photo. So the property on the right is, that window is where the previous photo was taken. So this is looking down Fowler's Avenue. So the left-hand side would be the practice nets along there. So you can see the close relationship, even on the other side of Fowler's Avenue, and the impact that that would have. So again, there's that white building that you could see in the previous photo. And again, there's that white building again. So this is in the garden of the property, which will actually abut the development. So this view, you would have the practice nets and bin store along there. So this is just one example of the close proximity of this part of the development to these neighbouring properties. And again, just to make note of the access road that will be along here and the mound as well. So while there is some sort of landscape along there, it's not precisely detailed and there's still a close relationship to that. The next two slides are visuals that are provided with the applications, just to give members an idea of the site within its context and of the proposed pavilion as well. So, as I say, this is a consultation from Lancashire County Council, and we have expressed concern and raised objections in recommendation 1 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Daniel. We don't have any registered speakers on this application from LCC, and we have the ward member, Councillor Jackie Alty. Jackie, if you'd like to come to the desk, press the speak button. You have 4 minutes, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak tonight. I've prepared a statement. I'm here tonight speaking for myself and Councillor Wharton Harben in support of a number of residents from Farington East relating to the proposed cricket development. While the concept of this project is welcomed by all, the planning leaves much to be desired. I think it's fair to say that the plan significantly compromised the amenity of some residential properties. The threat of overbearing structures, noise and early hours disturbance, combined with the loss of greenland views, have resulted in a very stressful situation. The mounds surrounding each pitch are to be of significant height and will compromise the privacy of adjoining neighbours within a few metres of the site boundary. The planned pavilion is an imposing structure, only the rear of which can be viewed by residents. A planned bin storage area is to be sited at the rear of the pavilion, creating a noise disturbance with the emptying of bins into larger waste receptacles and the subsequent removal of such waste, generating further noise and disturbance. An internal road within the site boundary is within a few metres of the residential properties, generating traffic noise into the early hours when patrons and staff leave the pavilion. The light pollution from both car headlights and low-level lighting will have an additional impact on the quality of life for those residents. The proposed site of storage for practice nets and the practice nets themselves is only a few metres from residential properties and will again have a negative impact, both visually and from a noise perspective. The arrival of an increase in traffic volume into Farington from Stanifield Lane can only exacerbate what is already a congestion issue throughout the year. There doesn't appear to be any proposals for pedestrian crossing facilities, improvements to the local highway network, or speed reduction measures on a road already generating regular concerns by residents of that area. And while cricket matches are said to be limited in occurrence, the use of the pavilion is to be accessible and in use throughout the year. The site is quite obviously designed to generate an income alongside the community benefits it will bring. It would be naive to suggest that when cricket matches are not in play, the pavilion will not generate traffic, noise and general disturbance. Finally, the green fields over the years will have become a natural habitat for wildlife and a view from which the residents have delighted. One could have expected that 2 cricket pitches and a pavilion could have been so designed as to visually and practically improve the quality of life for those who have established and lived there for years, while continuing to become established as a community asset. The residents I represent here tonight want the conceptual project to go ahead in a manner that benefits everyone. and despite having worked hard to collaborate without success, are relying on alternative proposals with mitigation built in to provide a credible solution to the problem not of their making. And I thank you for your time, and all the comments regarding Stanifield Lane have been pertinent tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Alty. It's wonderful when a ward councillor makes such a classic intervention on behalf of the residents. Councillor Flannery, I haven't got the agent or the applicant here, so I'm going straight into committee. Councillor Flannery and then Councillor Mrs Green.
Thanks, Chair. Once again, just for noting, and the applicant's not here tonight, but this will be determined again by Lancashire County Council. This is a significant scheme, and looking at the design and what's planned for this site looks very impressive, but there's something which sticks out a mile for me. It's like a complete disregard for a small amount of residents in the immediate vicinity. Now, I know the ward councillors have worked hard with the residents and they've held some consultation events, and they're a small group of people who are very sincere and very supportive of development. But if you look at the design of this and where they've actually put the bin store, it's like it's been a little, if any, sort of consideration on any level for these people. It's as if they don't exist, as if to say we don't care. But we care, so I want to make it known tonight that we strongly object to elements of this design which impact these residents. I also think if you're looking at the pavilion, with respect looking at the policy, I'm not sure if it does comply with the Greenbelt policy in terms of the openness, and I think that needs to be looked at. I think it is in the report anyway, but it's another consideration. So whilst an organisation like Lancashire County, and I know we've got councillors in here and good councillors like Michael Green from Lancashire, I urge them to go back and, you know, when they're doing a scheme like this, it does have an impact on people. It does have an impact on our residents, and I know you care as well. So I just wish they would just give a bit more due consideration to them. And I think in terms of us as a consultation tonight, or consultees, I just would like to formally note that we are completely in support of the residents. And I think they need to review the allocation of the design in terms of, particularly where the bin store and the practice nets are, because that could be done more sympathetically. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Flannery. I've got 3 words to send back to LCC. Those 3 words are location, location, location. Councillor Mrs Green.
I agree with Councillor Flannery on most of this. I think it's an absolute fantastic future development. Its facilities and buildings are absolutely fantastic. They're in the green belt, but we're allowed buildings in the green belt when it's linked with sport. And at the moment, we're very conscious of health and well-being, which is important. And I think the encouragement of, especially encouraging young people to get involved more in sport and take an interest. And I think these facilities will be used a lot by local children and local students for the local schools when there's not an official match or anything going on. So that's all to the good of the betterment of everyone. I feel that the world-class facilities, and they'll bring in economic benefits and even all hospitality events, which we are very short of hospitality in South Ribble. The only thing is, there are a couple of points which I agree with Councillor Flannery. This practice net, which I realise is affecting certain residents. Now, showing on there before, it showed that there was the houses that are being affected and the practice nets, and then some car parking, which all are behind the pavilion. Would it be a great issue if we could request with LCC that they just reverse that over? So to have the pavilion, have the practice nets and perhaps storage, which we're worried about the noise of storage, and then have the parking running along nearer to the houses. Just have them swapped over, have the parking the storage and the practice nets and the pavilion instead of being the other way around. So that would take the practice nets further away from the residential properties. Also, obviously, if it still goes along that line of having it there, we need bigger bunds, sound attenuation, fences, perhaps trees and bushes, planting, established trees and bushes, as much stuff we can put in as we can to attenuate the sound and obviously visual as well. And if and when this development goes along, could we get a request to LCC that we get restrictions on there that there's no parking in any area outside this development for probably a mile, 2 miles away on match days? It's got to be permit holders or residents only parking. I mean, you know, can I say I've been attending a lot of the rugby matches in various parts of the country, and you cannot park within a mile or 2 miles of any stadium unless you're a resident on match days especially. So it's not unreasonable to request that if and when this happens, this development happens, which I've no doubt it will, that we request that there are restrictions on the parking on match days within a good distance. Otherwise, it will impact on people parking even as far as Lostercall or Penwortham or Farington on those days. Those are just some ideas really that I wonder if you could put forward to county with this development. Other than that, the actual development itself, I think, is fantastic and good for the area. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Mrs Green. I think Stephen's been writing furiously for the last couple of minutes. Councillor Kath Unsworth, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, in the application, there's no mention at all of any wildlife impact or any effect on biodiversity or anything like that. There's only Councillor Jackie Alter that mentioned it in her presentation. Unless I've missed it.
Daniel, I can't see anything there either.
Thank you, Chair. I think there was a ecology report submitted with the application to County Council, but it's not something we've commented within our report. But if members feel they want to, that could be added to the response back to County Council.
Yeah, I think it should be put in our recommendations. That actually, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Most things have already been said that I would have mentioned, so I'll skip that and just go straight to, again, the road situation, access and egress, basically. So, but obviously, I'm very concerned about traffic flow. Councillor Alty mentioned as well pedestrian access and crossings and so on. So, just again, improvements to the road network in the area in order to allow traffic to flow, which is clearly going to be increased not just by this, but potentially by the other thing on the side of the road.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Have we any idea of the usage of this site? Is it going to be used on a daily basis, a weekly basis? Obviously, there'll be competitions maybe on a weekly, monthly basis. I don't know. But from my experience of these type of things, the noisy bit, the things that are used every day almost are the practice nets. That's where it's used every day. That's where it's noisiest, to be quite honest. I mean, a match day once a month or once every few weeks, it's might be a hassle locally, but it's not a huge hassle. But the practice ones could be used every single day, and I think we need some idea of the usage of the site. It's obviously a substantial site, and I think it'd be good for Farington, it'd be good for South Ribble, to be quite honest. And Councillor Flannery was quite right. When you look on there, it looks absolutely superb, doesn't it? I mean, we should all welcome something like that to South Ribble, to be quite honest. But the impact on people's lives need to be taken into account. So I don't know whether the officers have got any information with regard to the usage of the site, but that would be helpful, I think. Thank you.
Daniel, can you come back with the usage of the actual development?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So in terms of the two ovals itself, they would be for the women's team and the men's team. Sorry, it will be for the men's team and the women's team. In terms of the practice net, they haven't necessarily detailed who they'll be for. I'm assuming it'd be for the teams, but I think their intention is to use it for the wider community. In terms of the pavilion, their intention is to have that wider than just cricket members. I think they talk about having wedding functions and other functions in there as well. Private functions is what they said in the submission.
I think it'd be useful to have that sort of information. It enables you to make a proper and rational decision on what is going to happen. But I mean, if we're now talking, how are we going to open it out to the wider community? It doesn't say anything in there about that. Are they going to open it up to all the cricket clubs in South Ribble to use? Might put a different aspect on it. I don't know. I mean, it opens up a huge area of uncertainty, I suppose, to be quite honest. And you know, we really want to be positive on something like this, and we want to invite it to South Ribble, but they could have sold it a lot better than this application, to be quite honest. They really could. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. Right, can we put forward some recommendations, please? Councillor Molyneux.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It has been talked about the fact that this is a great facility and no doubt be welcome to South Ribble and very useful and a bit of a coup really as far as I'm concerned from that point of view. But we do have to think about the residents. I think Councillor Flannery mentioned there's only, you know, a few residents involved, but that to me shouldn't matter. There don't seem to be a lot of thought gone into that side. And I'm just concerned that this is too near to those houses. And I can't believe that they've not just made it a little bit further than they have. It's for me, it's too close. You're going to get a problem with parking. I'm sure that people tend to park wherever they can, and unless there is some kind of restriction on the parking side, which Councillor Green mentioned, I would have a major concern with that. For me, that you've got the visual impact and the noise impact, which will obviously, for those residents concerned, is going to be difficult if this goes on. And I appreciate it's not our decision this evening, but certainly I think we should just put forward our concerns. I think it is too near, and it has got a detrimental impact on those residents. Whether they can change it or, you know, consider moving it slightly, that will be more beneficial from my point of view. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Molyneux. Just for clarity, Daniel, the permanent access to this site, is it off the 582 or is it off Stanifield Lane?
It's off Stanifield Lane.
So it's off Stanifield Lane. That would be the permanent access to this site.
Yes, that's correct.
Via Fowler Lane by any chance? Or is there going to be a new access? Is it going to be accessed via Fowler Lane or off Stanifield Lane with a new access, or via Woodcock Estate?
So I've just put the plan back on the screen again. So the main access will be for Stanifield Lane here. I think they have talked in with the submission having a service access through here. But the main access for the car parking would be Stanifield Lane, which is the top part.
Yeah, I'm struggling to visualise this. Which part of Stanifield Lane are we talking about? Are we talking about in between Fowler Lane and Woodcock Estate, or are we talking about Fowler Lane or Woodcock Estate?
The top part is Fowler's Avenue there.
Okay, okay, thanks for your help. Thanks for that. Yeah, Councillor Mrs Green.
Yeah, could I ask you then, for that main car park, the top car park, the biggest car park, where would that be accessed from? Because it's at the top end. It looks like it's furthest away from Stanifield Lane. Would there not be access from up there for that part? Yeah, there would be. Yeah, no, thank you.
Right, okay, can we move this along? Can we start making some recommendations Stephen, can you read out what you've got for us at this moment? Because obviously it isn't something we can just knock back or approve because we're just being asked for our comments from LCC.
Yeah, so basically we've already got the recommendations in the report, and I think some of these points build on that. But Council Hartley picked up on pedestrian crossings, speed regulation, general congestion, pavilion use outside of the times of the cricket use, wildlife in the area. The residents want it to go ahead in a form, but not impacting upon their lives. Councillor Flannery, complete disregard for small group of residents, the bin store, practice nets, other activity, very close and strongly objected to that. Does the pavilion comply with green belt policy in generality in terms of the scale of it? Councillor Tomlinson used the 3 words location, location, location. Councillor Green, fantastic future development, health, well-being, children use, etc. World-class facility, bringing economic benefit. But again, requested that the practice nets and the car parking were flipped over so that the car park was adjacent to the boundary rather than the other uses. Asked for bigger buns, sound attenuation, planting, no car parking on match days outside of the facility. Councillor Unsworth reiterated the point about wildlife impact and biodiversity and to see the reports on that. Councillor Watson, access and egress again and pedestrian access. Councillor Smith, usage levels, particularly of the practice nets and who are we opening up to? Are they general public schools, etc.? Councillor Mulleneux, great facility, welcome, but we need to think about the residents, only a few, but not a lot of thought has been given to the proximity of the parking to them, and it's too near, and the visual impact upon their lives. Thanks, Chair.
Are we all happy with Councillor Mrs Green? And then Councillor Mulleneux, and then I'm tying up then.
Yeah, Stephen, could you ensure when you put in, if there's any restrictions on match days for the parking, that the restrictions stretch quite away from the development? Because we don't want them just, you can't park near the development and then they're going to go somewhere else nearby. We want quite a distance away, so they'll have to park away and walk in or use public transport or whatever.
Councillor Mulleneux.
Thank you, Chair. Just what Stephen mentioned there, it was visual impact, but also I mentioned about noise impact as well. I don't know if you got that. Thank you.
Okay, you added those two. You added those two onto there, Stephen. Right, are we all happy to go for the vote on those recommendations to LCC? I need a proposer. Councillor Flannery, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Watson, thank you. Let us go to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So in respect of land at Woodcock Estate at Stanifield Lane, the committee have decided to put forward the view set out in the report and comments made tonight by the committee to be formulated by the planning officer and submitted to LCC as the determining authority. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Taz. Right, item number 8 this evening. It is an actual South Ribble planning application, this one, so standard rules apply. Land to the west of Midge Hall Lane, Midge Hall, and Janice, if you would like to present this item, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the application relates to part of an agricultural field within the Greenbelt. The site is accessed off the existing track off Midge Hall Lane and is adjacent to the paintballing site, which is also accessed off that track. There's a scattering of farms and residential properties in the area, but there's nothing immediately adjacent to the site, and that just shows the site and the access track. So the proposal's for a change of use from agriculture to a use as a dog exercise field with associated parking for 2 vehicles, the installation of a 1.9 metre fence and an access gate, and that just shows the site. That's just an image of the proposed fencing. It's 1.9 metre high deer-proof fencing. And then that's just an image of the access gate. So the application is, as I've said, part of a larger field. And this is a view looking over the site towards the farm to which it's associated. This image shows the access track. The proposal is for a one-way system for part of the access. Now, County Highways initially raised some concerns regarding the level of parking and how the access arrangements would work. But this has been resolved by the inclusion of this sort of area here of hard standing, which can be used for additional parking or for a waiting area. County Highways have no issues now regarding the development with the inclusion of this area in the red edge. Environmental Health also initially had concerns as they thought it was difficult to objectively assess this type of development, and as such they require now the number of dogs to be restricted to 6 and the hours of use restricted to 8 AM to 7 PM Monday to Saturday and 10 till 4 on Sundays and bank holidays. So with those conditions in place, it's recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Janice. Right, we don't have any registered speakers, no members of the public wanting to speak. Councillor Michael Green, if you'd like to make your objections or approval, whatever you wish.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's nice to be able to speak on this one. There were several comments I could have made on the last two, but thanks for considering those two carefully. Turning to this application before us, it's almost a feeling of deja vu. Members of the committee will remember a similar application for a dog site, I think at the end of July this year, and that came forward as a retrospective application on that occasion, and it followed a number of problems that have been caused, significant problems that have been caused to the residents in that area. And I was pleased to say that on that occasion, the majority of the committee voted against that and stopped that from being used. Hence, I'm going to have some concerns that we're not creating another problem, this time in Midge, which is a very rural location, as you will be aware, Mr. Chairman. But turning to this application in particular, the access from it is from a busy, winding road, Midge Lane, which has a number of accidents as an history on that road. And the access is down the track, which also serves as a public right of way, which causes me some concerns. Given the problems which did happen at the site in Farington, I would look forward, if this was to go ahead, I'd look forward to getting some assurance that the fencing would be appropriate and would avoid any dogs from escaping over that fencing and causing a problem for any residents or land uses in the neighbouring area. Mr. Chairman, the nearest property is a quarter of a mile away from the site, but the land in that area is very flat. There are no acoustic obstructions whatsoever. And I would therefore submit that noise from the dogs will carry to residents in the area. Whilst the decision as to whether or not to approve this evening is clearly yours as a committee, and I'll leave that with yourselves to determine on what the best course of action is. What I would say though, Mr. Chairman, is I would submit that if this is approved this evening, we would need to tighten up on the conditions. I'm pleased at some of the conditions that have been put in place already. But in order to reduce the impact on residential amenity, I think we do need to go a little further. So I note the hours which are proposed for the hours of operation being 8 AM to 7 PM Monday to Saturday and 10 till 4 Sundays, bank holidays, etc. But I also note that the original application only applied in winter for it to be open during daylight hours, as there will be no lighting whatsoever to the site. So I'm kind of perplexed as to why that hasn't been picked up in the conditions. And I think a condition regarding the hours of operation during winter hours needs to be put on there to restrict it to daylight hours, maybe 8 AM to 3:30 PM, something of that nature, but I'll leave that with yourselves. And the other condition which I would suggest that if you are minded to approve this, that you could look to tighten up is with regard to the vehicle numbers. So repeatedly within the report, the agent has set out and confirmed to the council that there will only ever be 2 vehicles at one time. I do think that needs to be set down as a formal condition, that there should only be 2 vehicles at any one time on the site in the interest of residential amenity. So on that basis, Mr. Chairman, I'll leave it there. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening.
Okay, Councillor Green, thanks for your presentation. I'm a dog owner and my dog can't jump 2 metres high. I don't know any dogs who can, but anyway, Councillor Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chair. To say I've got a few concerns about this is undermining it, really. There are certain things in here that I'm not really happy about. They've been suggested they have a 12-month trial if it's passed.
Can I just interrupt you, Councillor Mrs. Green? I'm very remiss of me, and I do apologise to you all. The applicant is here in person, and she'd like to address the committee. I've jumped the gun a bit there. I do apologise. Do we have Fiona Horton with us this evening? Okay, I'm very sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, good evening, folks. Thanks for inviting me along tonight. There's nothing fundamentally I'd like to add to the application itself, but I just thought you might be interested in who I am and the background as to why I think this would be a good thing to happen off Midge Hall Lane. So I'm a managing director of 2 successful advertising agencies in central Manchester. That's my day job. In my spare time, I'm the chair of the board of the trustees for the Sophie Lancaster Foundation. I don't know whether you've heard of that charity. It's to do with hate crime. And I'm also the trustee of a charity in Burnley called Team Rise, which enriches the lives of adults with learning disabilities. Furthermore, I'm a dog person. I have 2 dogs of my own, but I also foster dogs for Spaniel Aid UK and also for Rochdale Dog Rescue. And I also do home checks for fosterers and adopters of those dogs. And I also do some work with another dog charity called the Oldies Club. I'm a prolific dog walker, obviously, and dog lover, obviously. The only secure dog field near here is Chester's Dog Field in New Longton. And it is consistently fully booked up to 3 weeks in advance. And when I'm fostering a dog, I'm ending up driving to the Wirral sometimes to take it somewhere secure because I can't let a foster dog off a lead, obviously. And it just struck me there's a real need for this. So I have been scouring land to buy unsuccessfully for months. And I found a landowner who offered me this site. And I was really hopeful that it's far away enough from any residents that hopefully this will be a successful application. So as I say, I have nothing to add to the actual application itself, but I would invite any questions from any of you.
Okay, Fiona, thanks for your presentation. I will now open up to committee. Councillor Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chair. I was just saying before, it's been suggested that there's a 12-month trial on this development if it goes ahead, but I believe the applicant isn't keen on that because of the cost that goes in. I think really I've got concerns because, as Councillor Green said, we had massive problems on the other development, and I feel, having a 12-month trial isn't a bad request, really. My real concerns are the access. It's an unadopted road, a private single track. Basically, it's where it comes out onto Midge Hall Lane. As a councillor of that area, I know it very well. When you're exiting onto there or even entering into that single track, the visibility is very bad. There's a sharp bend before you get to it on the left-hand side coming from Western Parishes. And the traffic is horrendous, travels at speed down Midge Hall Lane. There is a 40-mile limit at the moment, but nobody ever keeps to that speed limit. So people zoom down there. And it's a death trap trying to go in or egress out from that single track onto Midge Lane. Your life's in your hands when you do it. I go down there quite often. And when you go down, I don't know where that area is that it's showed for extra parking. I'm not sure of that, because when you go down that track you get as far as the farm first. There is an area, whether that's that area, but they normally have agricultural machinery, tractors, etc., all parked in that area, because often when I go down, they come out and look as if to say, who are you? You know, you're parking, you're not letting us move our vehicles round, etc. So it's very tight for turning and everything down there. And it concerns me when they say there's 6 dogs, maximum 6 dogs in an hour. That's potentially, unless it's a dog walker with a few dogs, that's potentially 6 cars. Now, there's only going to be space for 2 cars put down there. So where are the other 4 going to go? Now, the thing I'm bothered about as well is I don't know what business they do on the farm, what sort of farming they do, whether it's animals or whether it's agriculture. I don't know. I've not been round the back of the farm. If it's animals, obviously, dogs barking, what have you, can disturb the farm animals. In fact, can make them ill if the sheep and what have you. I know that's a danger. One thing that's worrying me is as well, if you know Midge Lane, there's the railway junction where the barriers come down, and they come down twice in every hour. When they come down, your traffic either side of that on that very busy road of Midge Lane back up. They can back up right up to the junction with Long Newgate on one side and quite a way down Midge down the other side. And that track isn't far from that railway. You've got your railway crossing where the pub is, you've got Bamford's property, and then there's a single track. Now, if those traffic are all parked up there, all backed up, you're not going to be able to get in or out of that lane, or you're going to stop the traffic on the main road. There's going to be an absolute bottleneck and accidents on there, and that is the real reason why I'm against this. It's on access, amount of traffic, no facilities for parking, and for that, really, I'd like to propose against this application. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Green. So Councillor Green's proposed refusal. Councillor Flannery.
Thanks, Chair. Contrary to my respected colleagues here tonight, I've got no issues with this application. I'm very familiar with this site. I've been down there plenty of times, and it's good to see that the business owner down there is looking to extend and diversifying and supporting Fiona's business also to diversify in these challenging times. It's also good to see that this application is nothing like the application we've seen in the past, which was retrospective and it was done largely by ignorance. This has been done properly, very transparent, and it seems to me a very reasonable application and set out accordingly, and it's very comprehensive, the report. So and I would also like to add 2 last things. It's heartwarming to hear what Fiona's doing for dogs. I'm a dog owner myself. That's got nothing to do with, hasn't influenced this, but it's heartwarming to hear the work that you do, and you're volunteering to do that. So well done. And I don't know why we've got deer-proof fencing when we've got dogs on this site, but nevertheless, that's obviously not my technical expertise. So I would like to move approval, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Flannery. Just on the point of the 2 vehicles at a time, and just try and put your mind at ease, Councillor Green. I had a week off work about 6 weeks ago and didn't go anywhere, so stayed at home. Took my dog out walking 10 o'clock in the morning on Fowler Lane in Farington. And I was amazed to see there were about 16 dogs on there, but there was only 2 women walking all 16 dogs because they dog walk. That is the trade, and that's what so they only need one vehicle for about 8 dogs, and that's how they get it. Right, okay, Councillor Sharples, and then Councillor Hesketh, and then Councillor Watson.
Thank you,
Councillor Sharples.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Fiona, for your presentation. Yeah, I'm going to second approval for this. It is similar to the one that we looked at in July, in the sense that it's a parcel of land with fences, a gate and dogs. And that's the only similarity. Because the one was it in Farington? I can't remember where it was now. You had houses adjacent to it, and there was a risk of people getting bitten and jumping over fences. It's on a lane down out of the way. It's something that we need. And in terms of your points about coming out onto that road, well, remind me never to go to Bamber's again. I go there regularly. If I come out of Bamber's, I'm going to get killed if the train lines are down, or you come out of any of those farms. If I take the kids to the paintballing, I'm going to be in trouble when I come out. That just doesn't have any weight whatsoever, that argument, because it's not going to change that hardly anything at all. I think it's a great idea, and it's something we do need. And we said that at the last application that refused, we all accepted, actually, we know we need this. Well, if we refuse this one, I'm going to refuse the next one. Where the heck can they go? Saddleworth Moor or somewhere? I don't know. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. And well done for all the work you do with dogs. I'm a dog lover. I've got 2 dogs. Fortunately, they're only little. They can't even jump on the seat at home. But yeah, I'd like to second the for this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Sharples. Councillor Hesketh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many people love dogs, especially the older people. And as people get older, they can't exercise the dogs, and dogs do need exercise, and it's good to have a facility of this nature so that people can have a dog and know that it can have a good walk, sometime during the day or whatever. And dogs do certainly need exercise. So I would much prefer that we have a facility of this nature rather than having dogs running wild in my sheep. So I will support this application, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hesketh, and I'm sure your sheep will not be worried. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I know it's not a competition, but I've got 3 dogs, one of which is a rescue spaniel. There's clearly a need for these sites. It's very, very obvious. I actually used one in near Southport, basically, as evidenced by the fact that you've had a travel distance. I do the same thing, and quite often it is. Well, in my case, I go with a friend and so on, and there's a lot of dogs there because she has a lot of dogs as well. So, I appreciate most of the time when these sites are used, it's normally many dogs and not a lot of cars. I'm assuming, though, can I ask you just for clarity, is that the intention on this one, that it would only be booked out for 2 people rather than with a capacity of 6? Do you see what I'm saying? It's in the booking system.
Yeah. It's going to be a maximum of 2 cars and a maximum of 6 dogs. So you could have 3 people in each car potentially, but it's the dogs really that we're wanting to limit.
Yeah.
And can I just respond to something else? May I? It will cost nearly £25,000 to set this up, which is why I push back on the 12-month proposal, because it's just not financially feasible to outlay £25,000. I won't even recoup that in the first couple of years probably. So not that I'm doing this financially, I'm actually doing it for altruistic reasons. But I obviously don't want to lose money either. 12 months just isn't viable financially. But yeah, 2 cars maximum at any one time. That's the conditions of booking the field for an hour slot.
Yeah, thank you for the clarity on that. As I just wanted to reassure that was going to be the case for some other members. I mean, actually, the previous application that came in, I was one of the few people that wanted it being deferred, to be honest with you, because I do see the absolute need for these things. And I thought the other one could have been potentially improved, though it was dealt with very badly, in fairness, by the person applying, retrospectively applying for it in that instance. And some of the evidence around and concerns around that particular application, I wasn't exactly convinced by at the time. And certainly things like the height of the fencing, the dogs they can't get, there might be 1 in a million dogs that can get over a couple of metres worth of fence, but they really are very, very unusual. So it's not something that concerns me as much as perhaps it would some others in that respect. And also, of course, you've got these dogs available to get onto parks and so on. And if they can get access there, this is at least a much more controlled environment. And frankly, I'd like to see dozens of these probably around South Ribble if I had my way. I absolutely will be going with this as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Watson. There's just no stopping you this evening, is there? Dogs that can jump 1.9 metre high fences are called horses. Councillor Smith, and then Councillor Hancock, and then we're going to tie up.
Thank you, Chair. I've got several questions, I suppose, but first of all, Councillor Michael Green, I think, proposed, not that he could propose anything, but suggested some sort of extra condition that might help the situation. It seems so long ago now that I can't remember what it was. I don't know whether officers can sort of tell us what that was and whether it would help the situation, first of all, before I say something else.
Yeah, it was to do with the winter. It was to do with the winter opening hours. To add something in about the winter opening hours, because it was just to be in the hours of daylight. So we could certainly tweak the condition that we've put on to include an extra sentence about that.
I'm not quite sure how that works, to be quite honest, but
so can you put in?
Does it not work?
Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah.
So can you put in the conditions that it's daylight hours in winter?
Yeah.
We can.
We can add that into the.
We can add that into the conditions.
Right. Fine. Thank you. That's okay. I'm happy with that. But again, Councillor Mary Green and others are concerned about the vehicles and transport. I mean, I work it out. My calculations are right. The movement of traffic is substantial, I have to say. I think it will probably, if every dog came in one car, I think it'd be 204 vehicle movements a week. Yeah. So it is substantial, but you know, the site is, I won't say in the middle of nowhere. It is on a busy road. I do accept that. With regard to noises, the one at New Longton is a field and a half away from where I live, across my field. I have to say we can't hear the dogs at all. We never hear anything. The only dogs I can hear are 3 fields away, are from the police training centre, and they do make an absolute racket, I have to say. So the thing about COVID, of course, and what's gone on is that everybody seems to have a dog now, and some dog owners don't exactly know what to do with them. I think when you're walking around, there's people with dogs on leads with 1 and 2 and 3 dogs walking around towns and things like that. And certainly exercise for dogs would be a good thing. I think there's been an absolute boom in dog ownership, and the facilities do need to be there for the owners who are responsible enough to take them off the roads and put them into an area which is in fields away from most people. It is needed. The other thing on that, with regard to the publicity, there are no letters of any representation against it or either for it, I suppose, but there's certainly not against it. So I have to say I'd be minded to vote with approval on this one, I think.
Okay, and finally, Councillor Harry Hancock, and then we are going to tie up this debate.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask Miss Horton, apart from exercising, would you be training dogs as well?
When you say would I, do you mean me personally?
Well, would your company or whatever it is be training dogs?
It's not a company, it's just something I'm doing as a side hustle, I think is what the young people call it. And no, I won't be doing any training.
Just exercising?
Sorry?
Just exercising dogs?
It's just for exercise for dogs. Yes.
Can I just say, Chair, I think care's been taken to contain these dogs by erecting the 1.9 high fence, which stops them from getting out. And I don't think any of these dogs are going to jump a deer fence, to be quite honest. If they are, they're exceptional dogs. So I'm quite willing to support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hancock. You're testing my patience. Go on. Fiona, thanks very much. Yeah, come on then. And I mean a second.
Yeah, the other condition that I suggested was with reference to the number of vehicles at any one time. The agent had confirmed in the report to the council that there would only be 2. I think the applicants had just confirmed exactly the same this evening. So that was the other point. Whilst we clearly have an applicant that seems to be acting reasonably and responsibly, if consent is granted this evening, consent goes with the land. So potentially at some point that business could be sold on to somebody else who doesn't act in that appropriate manner. So it's just to tie that down to 2 vehicles. I'll leave it with you. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Green. Can you put that in the conditions, please, Janice?
Condition in, and I'll get something worded.
You speak up, Janice. I didn't hear a word of that.
I'll get something worded out and as a condition.
Okay, thanks very much. Right, so we had a proposal from Councillor Mrs Green for refusal, but then we had an amendment by Councillor Flannery, who proposed approval, and it was seconded by Councillor Sharples. Any other proposals apart from? No? Right, so we're going for approval then. We're taking the amendment for approval from James Flannery, Councillor James Flannery, our missman, and Councillor Colin Sharples as the seconder. Okay, so if we can all go to the vote for approval, please. With conditions. Okay, Taz.
Thank you, Chair. So committee have decided to grant planning permission subject to conditions, and there was obviously comment in respect of the amendment of condition restricting the usage to daylight hours in the winter, and also the vehicle aspect as well, to restricting that to 2 vehicles. So that's subject to conditions for the change of use, land from agricultural to a dog exercise field in respect of this item. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Saz. Okay, thanks for your presentation, Fiona, and good luck for the future. Okay, if you've only come for item number 8, you are quite lucky to be able to leave. Let's move on to item number 9, which is 16 On the Hill, Liverpool Road, Penwortham. And Janice, if you'd like to present this item, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the application relates to the bar known as 16 On the Hill. It's located on the corner of Liverpool Road and Priory Lane in Penwortham. It's within the district centre and adjacent to other bars and restaurants. On the opposite side of Liverpool Road is the new Tesco supermarket. Above the application property is a commercial business, with the adjacent property having a residential apartment above. So the application proposes the erection of a pergola to the front outside seating area, and this image shows the pergola in relation to the front elevation. You'll note from the update sheet that it was wrongly described on the actual report, so it is just for the erection of a pergola. So this is just a plan view of the pergola. You can see from this image it doesn't cover the entire of the outside area. So this is an image of the pergola which will be made of metal. There's no objections from consultees or residents. Environmental Health request a condition to control the hours of use of the outside area. However, such a condition is already in place, which was imposed on the parent permission. So it's proposed just to tweak the condition suggested by Environmental Health, so it just relates to the pergola, so the hours of use of the pergola. So the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for your presentation, Janice. We have no registered speakers, no ward members wishing to speak. We don't have the applicant or the agent with us. Makes me very happy. Councillor Flannery, Councillor Smith, Councillor Hesketh, Councillor Watson, in that order, please.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I don't know why this is a committee, to be honest, unless someone can answer that in a minute, but just let me just make some comments first. You know, what I find frustrating about this is you've got an SME, once again, prepared to invest at an uncertain time into the business, and another department in our councils trying to impose other restrictions in terms of environmental health. I don't really get it, I'll be honest. It really frustrates me at times. If an SME with increased operating costs is prepared to invest in their business to make it better for the community and the people who attend, then we should be there to support them. And this is fully compliant. I don't know why it's a committee, so I'm moving approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I confirm that I will second of approval. I think the businesses in the centre of Penwortham should be very, very successful. The nature of the centre of Penwortham along there has changed significantly with the opening of Penwortham bypass, and yeah, I think Penwortham's starting to look good. It'll be a lot better when the centre's done, of course, and the regeneration part of it. But it's looking a lot better than it was, and I think it's probably very much more successful from a shopping point of view. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hesketh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very short what I have to say, but we have other facilities similar to this in South Ribble that have these heaters and so forth, and I don't see why we should pick on Penwortham, so I will there again go along with the application.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Hesketh. Councillor Watson.
What I was going to say has already really been said, but it's just nice to see that the number of businesses in that small area are putting in this many planning applications, proving that they're actually worthy of investing in the area. So I think all power to their elbow.
Thanks, Councillor Watson. Do I have any other proposals apart from approval this evening? If not, can we go to the vote for approval of the pergola at 16 on the hill? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to grant permission for the subject to conditions for the erection of a pergola structure to the front of the property known as 16 Liverpool Road, Penwortham. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Taz. Moving swiftly on to item number 10, storage building, Newgate Lane, Whitestake. Chris Sowerby, if you would like to make the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to a parcel of land which includes two agricultural style steel framed buildings within an area of land designated as Greenbelt. The nearest residential properties are 80 metres from the buildings. The site is accessed from an existing access from Newgate Lane. Crushed rubble has recently been laid along the side and rear of Unit 1 in order to provide a new access to Unit 2. The buildings were previously used to house livestock and have open sides. No alterations are proposed to the buildings. Unit 1 is currently being used for the storage of cardboard boxes. Between the buildings, hard standing which formed the farmyard is present. Unit 2 is used for the storage of motor vehicles. At a number of points along Newgate Lane, on-street parking restricts the width of the carriageway available for use. This is looking north towards the site from Chainhouse Lane is to the south behind you. Beyond Newgate Nurseries, the width of the road reduces to a single lane with no footways present. And you can see just indicated on this slide where the site access is. Objectors allege that this HGV, which is stuck, was servicing the site. However, this is disputed by the applicant, who affirms that the HGV was not heading for his site. Regardless of where this HGV was heading, this slide is an example for why condition 3 has been recommended, which prevents anything larger than a large transit or Luton van types from servicing the site. The reuse of buildings within the Greenbelt is permitted in principle under policy G2 of the local plan. With the imposition of the recommended conditions, there are no objections to the proposal from any statutory consultees. For these reasons and those contained within the report, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the imposition of conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Chris. Right, we have 4 members of the public wishing to speak in objection to the application, 1 member of the public wishing to speak in support. We have ward councillor, the chairman of the parish council, and the applicant. So let's get cracking. Do we have a Leslie Parkinson, please?
Public services. My home office overlooks the barns. Several residents are here tonight and others send their apologies. Notably, the assistant head teacher at All Hallows Catholic High School has asked us to express the school's concern for children who use the lanes to cycle to and from school. Residents are united in asking that this application is rejected outright. We'll cover a range of reasons in our speeches tonight. The open countryside on Green Lane and Newgate Lane is used a lot by local residents from the nearby Kingsfold estate and Penwortham without the need for a car. Highway safety and highway amenity for everyone using these lanes is paramount. County Highways' initial recommendation was to refuse this application due to serious concerns for highway safety. They described the access roads as narrow with limited footways. They highlight the issue of highway access on Green Lane and Newgate Lane for HGVs and other large vehicles. Facing refusal for this application, the applicant on paper scaled back the original plan for storage and parking so that County Highways would change their objection. Their new plan removes parking for 14 vehicles along the new road they hope to build, but they still want to build the new road. It's 8 metres wide. It's 141 metres long. Remarkably, we are asked to believe that this road will be used by 1 pickup truck per week visiting Unit 2. Traffic accessing Unit 1 is now described as a 3.5 tonne van, pickup and trailer, nothing bigger, just 2 visits a day. The applicant could have written anything in response to in order to appease County Highways and secure planning permission. We are being asked to blindly believe him. The truth is that Johnson's Cartons rent Unit 1. They work nationwide and it's a growing business. The text and photos on their Facebook page openly contradict the description of traffic use given to the planning office. These photos I've got, which I can't show you, show an HGV in use on the site with the wording, another Arctic load on the road again. And the picture of a forklift truck that's in operation during the day on the site with the text, a new forklift truck to cope with an increasing workload. Both of these images are from the Whitestake barns already. There's a real and significant difference between the messaging to planning and what's actually taking place. Highways were cautious when updating their initial refusal, stating that there should be an HGV restriction, and they added a list of other conditions which they indicated would be really difficult to impose. County highways were right to be cautious. Very recently, an Arctic lorry bound for the site got stuck under a tree on Green Lane, needed a tractor to cut the tree back and held up traffic for over an hour. We've got video footage of it going into the site. Another time, I got stuck in my car driving down Green Lane, along with several other cars. We couldn't pass the HGV coming the other way, delivering cardboard. My son jogs on the lane and dreads facing another Arctic lorry with little breathing space. This development results in a significant conflict between vans, HGVs, Arctic lorries, and pedestrians, cyclists, horse riders, mums and dads with prams. This conflict will exist for the lifetime of the industrial use, and given the design and character of the lane, it's detrimental to highway safety and amenity for residents and locals. Wear and tear is visually detrimental to the character of the lane. If this application is passed, adding conditions to control traffic type and frequency will force us, neighbours, to police the site, and it's something we don't want to do. Any breach of a condition takes a great deal of council time, personnel and money, and takes years to resolve in court. So we reasonably ask for the full refusal of this application and, in fact, any other application for this site that would see highway safety and highway amenity jeopardised. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your presentation. Leslie, do we have a Christine Furlong, please? Okay, you have 4 minutes, okay?
Good evening. My name is Christine Furlong. We've lived in Newgate Lane for about 20 years, and we live almost opposite the proposed site, which was until recently a working farm. The cattle barns were mainly used during the winter months. In the summer, the cows would be put out to grass. The farmer rarely visited more than twice a day. As near neighbours, we are very concerned at the proposed change of use from agriculture to an industrial use. If passed, this is likely to increase activity, noise, lighting and pollution. Newgate Lane is a one-track, narrow country lane with no footpaths, but despite this, it is used on a daily basis by large haulage lorries, farm vehicles and cars. The lane is also a popular dog walking area, not only used by residents of Whitestake, but by the people living in more built-up areas. The lane is also regularly used by horse riders, including the police horses, cyclists, and families enjoying the countryside. As a dog walker, I walk along Newgate Lane and Green Lane at least twice a day. I can give numerous examples of the difficulties that I and others have encountered walking along the lanes. For example, only the other day, as I was walking my dog, a large lorry travelling along Newgate Lane met another large works van coming at speed at the other direction. At the same time, there were 3 cyclists trying to navigate the road. The cyclists had to quickly dismount and stand on the edge of the ditches. My dog and I had to jump out of the way and stand on the opposite side to allow the traffic to pass. Surely the proposed change of use will inevitably result in even more heavy traffic, noise and pollution. From my lived experience and observations, I believe that pedestrians, cyclists, horse riders will be even more risk. A serious accident or fatality is waiting to happen. Whitestake has an abundance of wildlife, including protected hedgehogs, bats, and many species of birds, including relatively rare barn owls. It's a haven for wildlife. In order to protect our wildlife, we really must protect our green open spaces from further erosion. Over the last few years, we have watched the green belt being encroached upon by more and more inappropriate development. Do we really need or want an industrial unit in the middle of an agricultural field within the green belt? There must be hundreds of empty industrial units in Lancashire, but very few purpose-built agricultural barns that could be used by a local farmer. The applicant has asked for retrospective planning permission for a new road to be laid, running along the 2 buildings and behind the Unit 2. The applicant states that this is to service the second-hand car business. The road will be used about once a week. This road would impact upon the openness of the green belt, increase the size of the development, and take away valuable agricultural farmland. If council approve the application, we strongly suggest that the new road, in line with the national planning policy, be removed from the application. In my opinion, the proposed planning application for a change of use from agricultural to industrial use will not be in the interest of local agriculture, local wildlife and families who enjoy using the area. The development will certainly not be in keeping with semi-rural ambience of the area, which we are rapidly in danger of losing. They're not making any more land. Once farmland and greenland has gone, it'll be gone forever. Thank you.
Okay, Christine, thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have a Richard Kelsall? Okay, Richard, you have 4 minutes. Can I ask you, we've heard all about the highways issues, so can you give us something apart from highways? Thank you. Okay, you have 4 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Richard Kelsall and I live on Newgate Lane. As you already heard, the lanes are used by many people. We're also on a designated New Longton circular cycling route. This issue needs extra special consideration with regards to children cycling to school during dark mornings and evenings. There is no street lighting on Green Lane and half of Newgate Lane. During spring and summer, traffic to Newgate nurseries is heavy, with cars often being parked on Newgate Lane past the nursery right up to the access to the proposed development. The additional traffic that would arise from the proposed change would adversely affect the risk of damage and possible injury. As you know, both lanes are in very poor repair and ditches to either side on Newgate and much of Green Lane. My son, cycling to school and to visit friends, is often forced onto the grass verge to avoid traffic, whilst also having to avoid dangerous potholes and steep ditches. The alternative route for him onto Chainhouse Lane would expose him to the risk of busy, speeding traffic. With the government nudging us to healthier life, and with South River Borough Council itself having a core strategy encouraging improvements to the cycle network to make it easier and safer for cyclists, is there a need to increase the risk to them on an established and well-used route? And that's the actual route that you have published. My son and other children who live on Newgate Lane are amongst those living healthier lifestyles while reducing the carbon footprint of South Ribble. Does this application not have to be considered in the context of an overall planning strategy and the local cycling and infrastructure plan before giving permission for the change of use of an agricultural building? From the applicant's commission report, giving an estimated increase in the expected traffic, this is too vague and without independent evidence and should therefore be subject to further scrutiny. Whilst the report for the planning committee said it could be argued that the amount of traffic the application generates would be no more than for existing agricultural use, the converse is also true. It could be more. It has in fact started to be used as a storage and distribution centre and generated more traffic, including HGVs. Recently, I witnessed that one that was blocking Green Lane as it was lodged by a tree. Whilst we acknowledge the conditions suggesting debarring HGV access to the proposed site, a 3.5-tonne Luton van doesn't seem to reduce the risk greatly to pedestrians and cyclists. South River Borough Council has a local development plan where there are designated areas for 8B storage and distribution for development. Newgate Lane Whitestake is, as far as I'm aware, not on there. Are there not other storage and distribution sites with more suitable vehicle access already available? Why put one on Newgate Lane in Greenbelt, which is an agricultural and residential area? There may be a want to change the use of the buildings, but not a demonstrated need to justify the increase in vehicle use and associated increase to cyclists, pedestrians, horse riders and other road users. As a parent, my priority is the health and safety of my children, and we are all aware of who comes off worse in a collision between a cyclist and a vehicle. I have all too often seen these serious injuries during my career. For the consideration of the likely impact on highway capacity and safety for all highway users, I would ask you to refuse the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kelsall. Do we have an Andy Hunter? Okay, you have 4 minutes.
First, thanks for listening to our objections.
We've had 22 objections from 28 houses down Newgate Lane, and that should tell us all that the recommended approval goes against the wishes of pretty much all the residents down there. We disagree with many of the observations and considerations in the report that you've published, Chris. And tonight we want to try and convince you to reverse your recommended approval. And the parish council agrees with us. They agreed with it on Monday night. First, as far as we're aware, where are the very special circumstances that support this proposal that national planning requires? We don't believe there are any. And none have been presented in any of the papers that we've seen. Your recommended approval, as we've heard, adversely affects residents, dog walkers, leisure walkers, horse riders, including the police, and 2 stables, all for the sake of storing some motor cars and some cardboard boxes. Both Green Lane and Newgate Lane, as Richard's just said, are on your designated New Longton circular cycling route, and cycling is a big factor in local policy. But this proposal makes your designated cycle route pretty dangerous due to traffic and inevitable further road deterioration, or for the sake of storing some motor cars and cardboard boxes. County Highways has twice refused the application and now reversed that. We argue that their reversal is wrong, possibly because it's based on inaccurate information, as Leslie suggested. County Highway suggested that there's little difference on a lane like ours between an HGV and a 3-tonner, but there is one difference. A 3-tonner can pick up speed much faster than an HGV, and that makes it potentially more dangerous than an HGV, especially during the dark hours, as Richard summarised. And remember, there's no street lighting on Green Lane. This proposal would seriously jeopardise safety, and that's a serious consideration. The report says that the proposal would not have a detrimental impact on the openness of the green belt, and we disagree. Vehicles, the planning inspectorate says the field contributes to the openness of the area. And planning on Duxbury's recently was refused due to the urbanising effect of B8 use. So presumably the urbanising effect of B8 use applies to this proposal on Newgate Lane. Changing the use of the lands opens the floodgates. And although we realise that each application has to be considered on its merits, the fact that this is a planning organisation, you must consider what's going on in the future. And the floodgates are open if this changes from agricultural to non-agricultural. We think the approval would adversely affect residents in many ways, workers on sites, forklift trucks, deliveries, etc. And what about security? Will there be cameras because there's no power on site? How are they going to power the cameras? Will they put a generator on site? And what about fire? This is the cardboard boxes in a wooden building in the middle of the countryside with no water anywhere near it. It smacks of a strange decision. So there is residential impact. The applicants have also said they will only use the transport they suggested, but in their application they say they're going to be using a wagon. So you can't have it both ways. In our opinion, effectively a goods yard down a narrow, difficult, badly maintained country lane is wrong. South Ribble has apparently, as Richard said, already got designated areas for B8 storage and distribution. Why aren't the applicants going there? Are we suggesting that they might? If you approve this application, you'll forever change the use of the land. The toothpaste will be out of the tube. Approval now will open the floodgates. We urge you to think carefully about this, and the impact on this decision is huge. And there's one thing that you can't look at retrospectively, and that's highway safety. Because as Christine said, if an accident happens, it'll have happened. Leslie also said that we were given approval at about 5:30 for some of the kids down Newgate Lane. That's how important everyone they wanted to present to you guys. But we only found out about it.
4 minutes is up.
And that's about the long and short of it. So thank you for listening. Apologies if I've gone on.
Okay, thanks for your presentation. Do we have a Grant Eccles wishing to speak in support of the application, please?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I represent Johnson's Cartons Limited, a very small
company. It was my grandfather's business. We're a limited company. We used to be in Preston. This came up. It's a little bit bigger than what we had. We're not looking to do anything whatsoever to the outside of the building. It won't change at all. We don't need power. We have 1 foot lift truck. We've had the sound taken off it. We've had the lights taken off it. There is no noise whatsoever. Our vehicle, I employed 2 members of staff, so we have 2 vehicles. That's it, 2 vehicles. That unit will not get used by our vehicles more than 4 times a day. 100%. There isn't any question about that whatsoever. They only use Green Lane, and they start early, so they're starting at 8 o'clock, and nothing would be after 3 o'clock. I understand the posse that's been arranged against us, and it's quite infuriating because Newgate nurseries, I've been told by other residents, are having 11 Arctic deliveries a day. We don't have any of that. That vehicle that supposedly got stuck was absolutely nothing to do with us. It's very, very infuriating. I don't know what else I can say. We're a very, very small company. We do as we say. We're not nationwide. We pick up. We're a green company. We buy people's used cardboard boxes. I just wanted somewhere to store. That's all we wanted. We are all this talk of cyclists. I'm a massive cyclist myself. I cycle every day. Our vehicles are not dangerous. We don't drive dangerously. I've got 2 lads. One's a pickup and one's a small 3.5 ton box van. We don't have Arctics. We don't have 7.5 tonners. There's been things said about us that are not true, and that's not very nice. So I urge you to go ahead with the planning application. There's no reason not to. We will not bring anything other than what I've said down that lane. We will make no changes whatsoever to the building. You wouldn't even know there wasn't cattle in it. I can't say any more than that. We've been established 85 years. I've been personally doing it 36 years. We're registered Lancashire County Council waste carriers. We're VAT registered. I can't say any more. Hopefully you believe me. Thank you.
Okay, Grant, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Right, so that brings to a close the general public. I now have Councillor Mrs. Margaret Smith. The gentleman with your hand raised, are you the applicant? Yeah, well, I'll invite you to speak later, okay? Councillor Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start what I've written down, I'd just like to say 1 or 2 things about the comments that have just been made. There is no posse down Newgate Lane. They are a community, it's a very close community, and they work together, and they are really very, very concerned about what they feel is going to happen to an agricultural building that they have happily worked with over the years. The idea that 11 articulated vehicles go to Newgate nurseries every day is absolutely beyond the pale. They go there, they come in from Holland about 3 times a week. They don't come very much in the winter. They certainly come in the summer, we know that. So that's a total, absolute exaggeration by the gentleman. And I am concerned the fact that they've taken the noise off the pickup vehicle, whatever it is. I thought that was illegal. I thought that's what you had to have to make sure that people know that it is actually moving about. But as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, the residents that have come here this evening, who I have come here to support, are very passionate and committed to the fact that they don't want this application to go through. It's been very difficult for them. They have had to take a lot of stress
in Newgate Lane at the moment. There's a lot of controversy going on down there because of the buildings that are going on there. So they are very used to having to put up with a lot of difficulties in their lives as regards the buildings and the lane. I would just like to read, to actually say something about the openness of the lane and the area that is in jeopardy. Families often walk and jog around Newgate Lane, Green Lane and Pope Lane. Objections focus on the negative impact of the change the use poses to the openness of the green belt. Newgate Lane is a small settlement with green and rural characteristics. A planning application for 6 houses in a field just off Newgate Lane was refused by the planning officer and the planning inspector, as it would have a negative impact on the openness of the green belt. The inspector went so far as to identify the fields the barn sits in as evidence of the extent of the openness. Also noted earlier in this evening that the application was refused for Ventbrook to continue operating from Duxbury's, again due to the impact on the openness of the green belt and the lack of any special circumstances to mitigate this, the overall visual amenity and the urbanisation of the effect of the B8 industrial use. All these factors apply to the barns. I would argue more so, as the barns sit in the middle of an agricultural field that is farmland, in the middle of a larger farming community. The barns are surrounded by low hedges, so that they are visible from Newgate Lane, Green Lane, Pope Lane and Cage Lane. The planning officer's opinion that the change of use would have no impact on the openness of the green belt can be challenged and overturned, with the tangible proof to support refusal of the application. This includes the large vehicles moving on and off site, a new road running the full length of the barns to accommodate more traffic, and a forklift truck working on site all day, all accumulating in the change of the profile from agricultural to one of industrial. The overall bulk and new footpath created by the road, along with its use, will inevitably lead to a lack of openness. The new road is particularly where would appear as an incongruous addition to the street scene and within the wider rural landscape.
Councillor Smith, you've had 4.5 minutes. You really need
I'm
to
just
start
finishing
tying up.
now, if you don't mind. Thank you very much for your indulgence. I would therefore ask that the evidence to refuse the application on the grounds of the negative impact on the openness of the green belt, with no very special circumstances to mitigate this. I therefore would ask that tonight you do refuse this application on the grounds of lack of, that it would encroach on the openness of the green belt, and also it would, there's highways amenities, I think is also a very powerful reason to refuse this application. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, Councillor Smith. Right, we have Councillor Michael Green, who is the chair of the Farington Parish Council. This application doesn't fall into the Farington Parish Council, but I will allow you to speak.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I must like you.
Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Chairman.
4 minutes,
Likewise.
Councillor Smith.
Likewise. Good evening again, colleagues.
Councillor Green.
Yes, indeed, this application is just outside the boundaries of Farington Parish Council, but nevertheless has a significant impact upon the safety and amenity of residents of Farington. As such, we considered this application at the meeting of Farington Parish Council on Monday evening and unanimously resolved to object to the application. You will have received a late submission from the Parish Council. I thank officers and members for considering that late submission. And I just wish to expand a little on some of the points contained therein and one or two others, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Newgate Lane is a very narrow country lane used by walkers, horse riders and cyclists in the area. Even at its widest point, there are a large number of terrace properties without off-street parking. Those residents therefore have to park on Newgate Lane, which makes the road single track. Additional vehicles using the lane for access will only add further issues to the constraints which are already in place. The road simply does not lend itself to large vehicles using the route to access the site. I am concerned about the impact upon the flow of traffic from this proposed development, that traffic being motorised or indeed otherwise, and I have significant concerns over highway safety for people using that road. I'm further concerned about the significant impact upon residential amenity of additional traffic being allowed to go down there. Newgate Lane is a quiet country lane in a residential area. It is important, councillors, that we should avoid these residents being impacted by what are industrial developments. The proposed development which we are considering this evening, I would submit, is completely out of character in a residential area in the Greenbelt in open countryside. And I've touched on Greenbelt, and that's been mentioned by some of the previous speakers, Councillor Mrs Smith and some of the others objecting. And I would suggest that this development would be contrary to Greenbelt policy, as I believe it is urbanising in its nature and therefore has an impact upon the openness of the Greenbelt. I'll leave my comments there, Mr Chairman. You've listened to a large number of people objecting this evening and indeed one person supporting the application. I'll leave it with yourself and your colleagues to consider in detail, but I would reiterate that the Parish Council has voted unanimously in opposition to this on the grounds which have been set out. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Councillor Green. Right, do we have the applicant, Mr Steve Fairclough? Okay, Steve, as with everybody else, you have 4 minutes and I will let you know when your time's up if you need it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would like to say when we bought this site, we were advised by a chartered planner that it wouldn't be an issue as the farmer had retired, moved down south. The building is where it is. The building won't be getting changed. The land at the side they're talking about, open space, is not going to get changed. We've already got a tenant farmer on that. So actual change to anything on the side is absolutely negligible, nothing. As regards the traffic down Newgate Lane, and I live on Port Lane around the corner, and I walk down there every single day. The only people that tend to go down there are people who are using it as a rat run from Port Lane through onto Newgate Lane. And if they wanted to do anything about the traffic on there, I would suggest that they put a access only sign on it, and that would reduce the traffic by half. I knew the farmer personally who bought it off, and he used to be in there with an agricultural vehicle, i.e. a 4-track tractor. It's Andy who wrecked the road, and I can tell you where his midden is, halfway down Newgate Lane. The road's wrecked because obviously if you know what a 4-track tractor is, a great big massive thing with a big bin on the back which used to feed his cattle every day, at least twice a day. On top of that he had a telehandler which he had another building down the road which had cattle in as well, and he was up and down with his loader every day. The guy who's took it on, Grant from Johnson's Cartons, all they do, they load up in the morning, put the cardboard into the trailer and they're off. You never see them all day. I go down there every day. At the moment I'm walking down there twice a day. You never see them. I never see them on site. Also, that site has got planning permission for agricultural vehicles. Now, agricultural vehicles are usually wider and bigger than anything you will get on the road. So I've got planning for that, so I can put agricultural vehicles in it, which would be more of a detriment. And if we put cattle back in it, that'd be more of a detriment to the site than what's going on now. They don't make any noise. They don't want any electric on. They're quite happy with what they've got. The other lady who bought the site with us has a car dealership, and she wanted to store some cars in there, and that was the initial thought on it. Now, we said when we bought it that we'd make it look nice and tidy and all the rest of it, but the local residents said they didn't want that, they didn't want to change, so I said, fine, okay, we'll change it. And I spoke to the officer in charge, and he said that, yeah, that's fine, that's, you know, on your side, obviously. And we said, you know, I live in the area, I have no intentions of doing anything with that 10-acre field. You would never, ever get planning on that in a month of Sundays. And it's not come through from the objections, but the main thing is they think we're going to get planning on 10 acres. Not a kind of chance of getting planning on there. So I'd say that we're not doing anything, in fact, on the detriments, anything down there, especially the open space, because the buildings are there. You know, what can't speak, can't lie. So we're not changing anything really. So, and that's, as I said, I've took advice of the people we're supposed to know, which is Chris, the officer, and my chartered planner, who's not here tonight. But, and he said, well, the government policy is that you can change redundant and handing elders in Shropshire, so we can't put cattle in there, obviously. Change that to, which is the most, how can I put it, disruptive, less disruptive thing, is it's just storage instead of anything manufacturing or anything like that. We knew that couldn't happen. So I'm quite happy that we've not done anything wrong, and I don't want to upset the neighbours. I don't want to fall out with anybody. I live in the area myself. I only live 5 minutes away from there, you know. So, and as I say, the traffic, if they want to reduce the traffic, as I said, put an access only on it, because I walk past and it's right what they say, you have to stand in the side while traffic passes. Okay, thank you for listening to me, and I hope everything goes okay. Okay.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Steve. Thank you very much. Chris, would you like to come back with any points before I open up to the committee?
Yeah, just a couple of points, please, Chair. One of the objectors made reference to the fact that there's no very special circumstances in regards to the Greenbelt. I just want to refer the Planning Committee to section 8.13 of the report. That lists exceptions to inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, and in effect states that the reuse of buildings is acceptable in the Greenbelt, provided that the buildings are of a permanent and substantial construction. Therefore, the proposal doesn't need to satisfy the very special circumstances test. And the second point was there was a couple of references made to an application that was recently refused on Duxbury's nearby. That was also for a B8 use, but what was materially different in that case was that the user of that site had all their storage externally. It was a lot of equipment associated with highway maintenance, and that was for external storage. And the view was taken that that would have a materially greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. In this case, the storage is proposed internally within existing buildings, and there is a condition, I think it's condition 3 that we are recommending. No, it's actually condition 4, which would restrict any form of external storage. So each application obviously has to be judged on its merits. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. Something's just come to light. Councillor Donoghue.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The applicant is known to me, so I'm going to decide to leave the meeting and leave it at that.
Okay, thanks for honesty, Councillor Donoghue. Right, so that's all representations being made. I am now going to open up to committee. Councillor Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chair. I must say that I'm sorry to speak in this way with the applicants, because I think they've come and given very heartfelt application to the side of the story, but unfortunately there's one rule and one rule alone. Greenbelt is Greenbelt. Greenbelt is only allowed to have agricultural buildings that's been used for agricultural use and not turned into warehouses, which basically where the cardboard boxes are is potentially a warehouse. That is a warehouse. The other storage is for storing cars. So neither of those are any sort of use that's linked to any sort of agriculture whatsoever. I do agree on page 47, you're saying about the considerations for different use of green belt. But if you look at 8.2 C and D, it says the proposed development would not result in an adverse impact in respect of noise orders, emissions or traffic. Well, obviously this will impact on traffic. And D, the building and site has access to a public highway available for use without creating traffic hazards and without involving significant road improvements, which would have an undue environmental impact. Well, what we've heard from the objectors this evening, there are great traffic hazards. There's children going up there, there's cyclists, there's dog walkers, there's no pavements whatsoever. It's a narrow road, you can't get two cars down, can't get two vehicles down. And although the applicant says they've only got a car trailer to take one car at a time, in the report it says there's 10 car spaces for parking. I mean, you're not telling me they're going to go from, I believe it's Chorley the cars are coming from. They're not going to travel from Chorley to Newgate Drive every day with 10 trips a day from Chorley. I mean, eventually in time, I might be suspicious, but eventually in time, I would suspect they get a bigger vehicle to transport more cars. It's too narrow. And as it's been previously stated, where the cottages are at the bottom of Newgate Lane, they've got to park on one side because they live there and there's no other parking. They've no drives. That's in front of their property. So they're entitled to park there, but in which case you're going to have more problem of the narrowness of the road, even at the bottom end where it goes on to Chainhouse Lane. Never mind the top end where Green Lane is. So I'm proposing refusal of this application. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Green. Chris, do you want to come back on any of those comments then, especially regarding the car storage?
Yes, thank you, Chair. In regards to the types of uses that are acceptable in the Greenbelt, the Greenbelt policy is a policy about spatial separation and preventing encroachment into open areas, and it's protecting the spaces between towns. There is, in terms of uses, there is nothing to suggest that it is only for agricultural uses. Policy G2 of the South Ribble Local Plan relates to the reuse of existing buildings within the Greenbelt. This is an existing building within the Greenbelt, so it's the relevant policy in relation to this proposal. The policy states that the reuse of existing buildings will be permitted, and there's obviously a number of criteria there, which I think Councillor Green referred to. I'd also just like to highlight the fact that the justification for that policy, it states a preference for commercial, industrial and recreational uses of buildings over residential. So it isn't just about agriculture. Reference was also made about the provision of car parking and how it correlates to the tenants that are currently operating for the units. The planning permission obviously goes with the site. You have an applicant here who's purchased the site and has rented it out to two tenants. The proposal is for a change of use to storage. Should planning permission be granted, it's not restricted to the two tenants that are currently in there. So it may well be a case that one of the tenants leaves in time, a new operator might come in, storage and distribution. They would still need to abide by whatever conditions are imposed should the planning committee be minded to approve the application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Thanks, Chris Sowerby. Been a long day. So we have a proposal for refusal from Councillor Mrs Green. I have Councillor Colin Sharples and Councillor James Flannery. In that order, please.
Thank you, Chair. Stuck between a rock and a hard place with this one, very much so. It's a really, really difficult one. Not sure about the openness re Greenbelt, whether it's going to affect that at all. I'm not sure where that argument comes from because the building's not changing. Everything's exactly the same. So I'm not sure where that came from. But the traffic, on one side of the argument, people are saying there's going to be a lot more traffic, and then the applicant's saying, well, actually, it's only 4 times a day. And you think, well, who's right? And if the applicant is four times a day at the moment and things expand, is it going to be more than 4 times a day? You just don't know. But, you know, I think I just don't see the point of refusing it. I honestly believe if we refuse this, those box vans or the other vehicles didn't go up and down that road 4 times a day. Doesn't that really make a fantastic difference to what's happening already in terms of traffic and traffic safety? I just can't see that. If it was 40 times a day, I'd be thinking, well, hang on, that's an issue. I mean, is it possible, for example, that we could say to the company, why don't you just come, you're 4 times a day, but why don't you make that between, 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock in the morning and sort of early afternoon or something, or early evening when there isn't people going to and from school? Can we compromise all the ways round it? But I just can't see why, for what we do, what's wanted here, for this storage and the movement of this stuff 4 times a day, I don't see how it massively impacts what's already happening. The other side of the argument, I said to myself, well, maybe, this applicant could find somewhere else to store its cardboard far easier than we can ask the residents to do what they need to do to compromise. But at the moment, I really don't think, saying to refusing this, there isn't that movement and suddenly everything's going to be hunky-dory or not going to be a lot worse. I just don't see that for 4 times a day. So I want to propose approval, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Sharples, thank you for that. Councillor Flannery.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, I want to thank everyone who's contributed tonight, the residents, the applicant, members not on committee and members on committee. I think everyone's contribution has been meant sincerely and meant well. There's some clear things here in the report in terms of how we address this, because we come here with, it's a hard job, to be honest, when we get something like this, because we want you all to come out of this with something. But my fear here is the statutory consultees haven't objected. And from experience, what may happen here, just as to the residents, if we refuse, then the applicant could appeal, and if he wins on appeal, he just gets it, or they just get it. But conversely, if we approve, we realise that there'll be some dissatisfaction for yourselves because you've made a very good case for the alternative. So this is a very unique lane, isn't it? Because there is a business on there, and there are deliveries to the nursery, because obviously I go there myself, and there are residents and families. And at the top of your lane, unfortunately, there's a lot of development going on, isn't there? So you probably get vehicles which are misdirected coming on your lane, which should be going down to the other place. So I'm not sure if this is going to help, but the intention is to help, if you don't mind. I'm going to split my respected colleagues right down the middle and propose deferral with the aim of our officers facilitating a meeting with the applicants who's very sincere in what they said and the residents who are very sincere in what they want, to get together to come to some sort of further understanding or compromise. And then you don't have a situation where, if it gets refused and the appeal, and then you've got no dialogue at all, you just get nothing, you just get it. Whereas we understand that you don't want it, but the applicants may be able to do some compromise because he seemed very sincere in terms of what he was proposing. So I'm going to propose deferral, Chair, on that basis, if that's okay. And it is honestly meant to help. I know it doesn't feel like to some people, but thank you, cheers. My voice has gone now.
Thanks for your wisdom, as usual, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Hesketh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have given permission for many agricultural buildings in the past, to be changed over to industrial use. And surely this must be a similar sort of thing. And I think the easy way out tonight, or not, we shouldn't take an easy way, but I think the best way tonight is to go along with deferral, Mr. Chairman, and maybe we will get some more concrete information at another meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Hesketh. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to second Councillor Green's refusal for various different reasons. I think the residents themselves have a lot more information than they were able to present to this committee this evening. I mean, I've seen the information, I've got the information. It is available. Articulated vehicles visit that site. Articulated vehicles get stuck on that site. The road itself, Newgate Lane, well, we know what it lives. We sort of live not too far away from there. But Green Lane and the top end of Newgate Lane is a single track road. It's probably one of the worst kept roads in South Ribble, to be quite honest. It is not safe. You see what some of the residents have done down Green Lane. Well, there's huge, great tree trunks, if anybody's visited down there, on the side of the road to actually protect the grass verges. County Council recognise that. They recognise the protection and destruction of the green verges. And of course, the first two, I think, letters from County Council were recommending refusal. About heavy goods vehicles using the route. It's from the north, it's very narrow with restrictive tight bend. All access roads are narrow with soft verges. The road is a nightmare. It's a really, really busy lane and it's very, very narrow. If you go down there in a car, you're bouncing around all over the place. I don't go down in my car. I go down in Mrs. Smith's car, which copes with the big holes in the road and the verges a lot better than mine does. With regard to, I mean, I would propose the refusal, or Mary's Councillor Green's proposed refusal, but highway amenity is one, highway safety is another. People do use that road and walk up and down that road on a regular basis. The cycle path is a main route cycle path that goes across down Green Lane, across the top of Newgate Lane and down the lanes itself on the way to Leyland. And this is used regularly. So I think that highway amenity and highway safety is another good reason for refusal of this particular site. Residential amenity, that is also an issue. There are heavy goods vehicles there, and the applicant has they've pointed out about the garden centre there, Newgate Nurseries. Newgate Nurseries have been there 100 years nearly. And yes, their business is a good business. They are it's a proper nursery, and they do get articulated vehicles there. They do. There's no doubt about that. But they wait in the morning till the traffic has gone. They park up somewhere. They come in at a sensible time during the day, as much as they can. And businesses are allowed, businesses like Newgate Nurseries that are now third generation, are allowed by law to expand their businesses. It's a natural expansion. They're allowed by law to do that. So what happens at Newgate Nurseries is impacting locally, but they're allowed to do it by law. I think this one is completely different. I think B8 use is certainly not suitable at all in that area. And the 8 metres by 141 metres road that is to be established to run in there to get access to both of the units. Again, I know it's at ground level, but it allows access to the units, which impacts on the on Greenbelt itself. There are various other reasons I could come up with, but I think at the moment that is the way that that I will be voting. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Smith. Do you have a specific policy in mind for refusal?
Better leave it to the officers. For amenity in Greenbelt, maybe highway safety, all the reasons
I
that
prefer if you did Greenbelt because LCC highways haven't objected, have they? So we might struggle on that.
Depends on which letter you read from LCC highways.
Right. Can I just have
there's various reasons there. I mean, as you know, when we come to planning committee, we listen to what is said by various people. We make our minds up on what is said by either the applicant or the residents or fellow councillors. We don't come armed with a raft of paper on all the planning documents. We rely on our officers to give us that information on what we have said. Now, if we are to come with a raft of paper on all the planning documents, we need a lot more space on these desks than we've got now. So I have mentioned exactly what I would refuse on, and the officers, I'm sure, will come up with the correct planning guidelines.
Okay, Councillor Smith, you can turn your microphone off now. Councillor Molyneux.
I might not have.
And then I'm going to tie this debate up.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask the officer, as far as the Greenbelt issue, I know we're saying we can change it from agricultural to industrial, but I have a fear there that Greenbelt is being eroded all the time anyway, or that people are trying to do them more and more. And my concern is if you change this to from an agricultural to industrial, does that mean in future that could affect the Greenbelt in other ways, i.e. building something on it, or the fact it's gone to industrial rather than it's staying agricultural? And
Chris, if you'd like to come on that one.
Can I come back?
Thank you, Chair. If the site was to receive planning permission for the change of use, it would become a previously developed site. So that could potentially lead to a number of other types of applications further down the line. However, agricultural buildings can still be subject to applications to turn them into various uses, commercial. Sorry, I'm getting a really high-pitched noise from somewhere. And also agricultural buildings can be subject to prior approval applications to be converted into residential. So it isn't a case of this is one step down a certain road, because there, even in its current form and its current state, there is still potential for changes of use and redevelopment of the site if it remains agricultural. In regards to the green belts, with the change of use being the buildings and there being no external storage, our advice would be that to refuse the use on greenbelt grounds would be a weak reason for refusal. There are, however, associated works proposed, like the new access road, and then that's up to the planning committee to consider if that development would materially impact on the openness of the greenbelt. So I'd suggest that use of the buildings would be in the greenbelt as a reason for refusal would be a weak reason. The planning committee would need to consider if the physical works that are proposed, the creation of that access lane and around the Unit 2, whether or not that would have a materially greater impact on the green belt, and that is a subjective matter for the planning committee to consider.
Okay, thanks for your help, Chris. Right, one more, and then I'm tying this up. We're going, okay?
I am concerned about the green belt, and I just think this is an erosion of it. I don't think we should allow this. As far as the residents, obviously they've come out in force this evening and shown quite clearly that they don't want this application to go through. And I think as a responsible council, and obviously as planning committee members, we should be looking at supporting those residents with their concerns. Now, one thing that hasn't been mentioned tonight was the Localism Act, which we've talked about several times on this planning committee meeting, which gives the right of the residents to decide if they want something or not. And they've clearly shown this evening that they don't want it. So I do think that bears some weight for this committee this evening to go against this application for that reason. And it is a difficult one. I appreciate what's been said, but for my concerns, the way that the green belt is being eroded, and as our officer just suggested there, it may not affect things. I personally think it will. But so from that point of view, I would vote for a refusal this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Molyneux. Just to bring into clarity your Localism Act, the people of South Ribble were highly against Pickering's Farm because of the Localism Act. So the Secretary of State called it in and said he was going to make the decision anyway, and that could happen in any application, whether there's a Localism Act or not. Right, okay, I'm tying up now. So we had a proposal for refusal from Councillor Mrs Green, seconded by Councillor Phil Smith. We then had a proposal for approval from Councillor Sharples, but we haven't had a seconder for that one, so that's fallen. And then we had proposal for deferral from Councillor Flannery, which was seconded by Councillor Hesketh. So the first vote we're going to do this evening is on a deferral of this item so that the officers and applicants and residents can get together and try and come up with a compromise and a solution to this. So this is a vote for deferral. You're either for it or against it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So members of the committee have decided to defer this matter to allow for further discussions between the applicant, between residents and officers. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Taz. Okay, if you're just here for item 10, that's the item finished. If you'd like to leave, we can then move on swiftly to item number 11. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're having a 5-minute comfort break. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to item 11. We can all relax now. The general public have all left, so we're left to our own devices. Chris? We have to. Chris, would you like to present the item, have we to just move approval?
I'll do a streamlined version
okay,
of the
go on.
presentation. This is the site. Existing area of hard standing used for car parking, grassed area to the rear. The proposal is for a 108 metre by 14.2 metre cold store building, which will be up to 16.3 metres in height. The existing access arrangement through the Parcel 4 site is also proposed to be stopped up with a new direct access onto Carnfield Place. There are no objections from any statutory consultees. There are no nearby residential properties. For these reasons and those contained from the report, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
I'm sure we can go a bit. What can we find about this one? Councillor Smith.
I think I might have changed my mind now I've heard the report, Chair. There you go. I propose approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, Councillor Mrs Mary Green and Councillor Hesketh and Councillor Flannery in that order. Councillor Hesketh.
Around. So I'll go along with approval, Mr. Chairman.
Marvellous. Councillor Flannery.
Thanks, Chair. Can we first of all review section 1 of the... I'm only kidding. Go with it. Thank you, Chairs.
Okay, so have we any other proposals? No? Okay, let's go to the electronic vote quickly.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So committee have decided to grant planning permission subject to conditions for the erection of detached and store building in respect of 270 Carnfield Place. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Taz. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this evening. I would just like to say a huge thank you to my friend Jonathan Nord, who I've known many years. He's leaving us for pastures new. And I wish you every luck for the future. Not that you're going to need it. And you leave us in a better position than when you arrived. So well done. Thanks for everything.